What's up, y'all? Welcome to Hot Takes, the show where I take your hot takes and react to them and have conversations about them. Let's jump into it. First one from AF Pops Daido. I think that's how it's pronounced. The Browns led the league in attempts in 2024 with 661 passes. With a renewed emphasis on the running game, utilizing more 12 personnel sets, Fannin, it is unlikely that Jeudy will get the opportunity to increase his production. The Browns, I think the distinction to make there is that the Browns led the league in pass attempts, but Jerry Jeudy didn't lead the league in targets. And the reason that's an important distinction to make is because the kind of targets that Jerry Jeudy got were rather normal for a number one wide receiver. It's about 140 targets. I think his targets will go up despite the Browns' passing attempts going down. And the reason is, look, let's say the Browns cut from 661 pass attempts next year to somewhere it's about the bottom of the league. 2020, 2021, the Browns were about 500 passing attempts. Let's say they're at 500 passing attempts, right? They're talking about going back to 2020, 21, 500 passing attempts, about what you do. Well, let's really walk through who's getting those attempts, who's getting those targets at least. So Jerry Jeudy, let's write Jerry Jeudy down for about 150 targets. I think that's fair. He could get more, he could get less, but 150 targets for Jerry Jeudy. David Njoku going to get about 100 targets. Cedric Tillman or whoever's wide receiver number 2, another 100 targets. We're at 350 targets right now. And then you got to think about, some of the other guys, right? There's about, I would say 60 to 70 targets for your tight end 2. So Harold Fainin gets about 60. So let's add him to that. Let's also say 40 targets to someone else in the wide receiver room, Jamari Thrash, Deontay Johnson, whoever becomes, the backup slot guy whenever Jerry Jeudy goes and plays the X. So right now we have about 100, 300, 450 snaps accounted for right now, right? Targets accounted for. And then you got 50 more targets for your running backs and everybody else on the roster there. So yeah, the Browns are throwing the ball less, but what that's going to affect is the guys at the bottom of the depth chart, not the guys at the top, because you're going to make sure that Jerry Jeudy's taken care of. He gets his 150. You're going to make sure that David Njoku's taken care of. He has his 100, right? You're going to make sure that Cedric Tillman gets his 100. Everybody else under that, maybe you want to make sure that Harold Fainin gets his 60 as well, right? Like, other than that, it don't really matter who gets the rest of those targets. So when we're talking about the Browns passing less, that doesn't mean they're going to throw the ball less to Jerry Jeudy. They're probably going to throw the ball more to Jerry Jeudy, because think about it like this. This Browns offense does not have a lot of playmakers, but the playmakers they do have that are established in the NFL are Jerry Jeudy, a Pro Bowler, and David Njoku, a Pro Bowler. Why would they give those guys the ball less? I understand wanting to pass the ball overall less, but why would you give David Njoku less opportunities? He's a Pro Bowler. He's one of the few Pro Bowlers you have as a skill player on this offense right now. Why would you give Jerry Jeudy the ball less? He's a Pro Bowler, one of the few skill players that can be explosive on this team. So their targets aren't going to go down. They're going to be prioritized more, and they're probably going to have a higher percentage of the workload, yes, but also a higher percentage of the targets. Like, that's going to be where the Browns are going to sit. So, no, I don't think just because the overall number of passing attempts go down, that means that Jerry Jeudy's production should see a drop. I think that the Browns are going to look for Jerry Jeudy a lot in this offense. They're going to look for David Njoku a lot, and that's where the ball is going to be going a lot. I don't think they're going to rely on depth as much as they're going to rely on overall Jerry Jeudy, because he's one of the few offensive players that you can rely on, right? Him and David Njoku. So they're going to get a lot of time here. They're going to get a lot of time. Passing attempts may go down, but the amount of attempts that those guys get, I think, stays the same. Next hot take is from 330 Wiz, who says, I have a terrible feeling that everybody is overlooking how horrific our offensive line is. Our QB play is going to be bad. Flacco played okay with us, not great, not terrible. but that was 2 years ago. O-line peaked in 2020. It's 2025. The only prayer we have if Shedeur is the guy and can process information at an elite level, get the ball out extremely quickly, and that will negate how bad our O-line is. Short of that, we're in big trouble, especially because everybody seems so optimistic about this team, and that's wrong. Well, what do you define as optimistic? Like, I don't think anybody is predicting the Browns to go over 500. So, like, I don't know if I would say somebody saying the Browns can win 7 games is optimistic. I think that's fair for where the Browns are. And you don't need an amazing offensive line to win 7 games in the NFL, right? Like, you can have flaws and go 500 in the NFL. You don't have to be a perfect team to do that. Maybe if the standard we're judging them on is Super Bowl, then yeah, the offensive line could be a huge hindrance to that, or would be a huge hindrance to that. But we're talking about the Browns winning 7, 8 games. I don't think the offensive line is that much of a hindrance. And I think playing Joe Flacco will actually help you with the offensive line, because Joe Flacco is going to get rid of the ball quickly. That's one of the things that Joe Flacco has always done in his career at a very high level. He's always been high tier at avoiding sacks. And I think that's somebody who's going to be really important to have with Shedeur, because Shedeur, I think his game's not really well suited to avoid sacks, and he needs to learn how to do that. So watching Joe Flacco will be helpful for him, because Joe is really good at avoiding taking a sack. He's always been really good at that. So I expect him to still be able to do that. We saw last year when the Browns offensive line looked awful with Deshaun and DTR, they were a lot better with Jameis Winston, right? And you look at the quarterback room right now, they're all traditional drop back passers who are going to play in the pocket. So I don't think the Browns offensive line is going to be amazing, but do I think it's an offensive line that you could go 500 with? More than likely, yes. I think they'll be able to run block well. And I don't think anybody's saying that the Browns offensive line is going to be amazing, that the Browns are like, I haven't heard one credible person predict the Browns are going to make the playoffs this year. I don't know if there is somebody out there saying that, but I'm not there. And I don't think anybody else is there. I don't know where you're getting like people having this like, oh, super optimism about this season. I think people are just excited about seeing high draft picks on this team again, highly coveted players coming out of college be on this team again, and that refreshed the Browns' ability to be able to get some young talent on this team. Chris has a hot take here. Got to give Kevin credit for adjusting his approach to OTAs and training camp. Sometimes coaches who are 5 or more years into their career can get stubborn and not be open to changes. This is definitely a good step. This is where I tend to be with Kevin and giving him credit for what's going on with training camp. There is the obvious counter argument to why didn't you just do this the entire time? I think the appropriate response to that is, hey, look, you try things. Sometimes those things work. Sometimes they don't. I don't really get caught up in what you try and what works or not. It's how long you stick with something that doesn't work that I start to judge, because it's like everybody's going to make a bad decision here or there. How long you tie yourself to that decision is the problem. And Kevin has shown a good amount of flexibility when it comes to being receptive to criticism about him, or legitimate faults that he might have had in his coaching game. And I think he has learned a great deal in the last 5 years. And I feel pretty good with where Kevin is and how he's been handling the camp. I have not always felt that way about Kevin. It's been one of my main complaints about Kevin in his time in Cleveland. And it's nice to see that maybe this year will be a little bit different, because it certainly feels like it's going to be different. Now, you got to follow through and still do this in training camp, but 2 joint practices, that's a step in the right direction. We'll see how many guys play in the preseason. I think that's another step in the right direction. They have more guys playing the preseason. And a more physical training camp overall, I think that's also another step in the right direction if he follows through and does all of these things. So for what we're seeing right now, good on Kevin, but I'm not going to give him the full pat on the back until he actually finishes the camp and he does everything that people have been saying he's going to do. Buckeye Steve says, when you listen to Greg Newsome clip, it's so clear how much Watson was an albatross around the neck of this team last year. The Browns are coming off a 3-win season, a public trade request, fight with their star player, and 4 QBs on the roster with no clear starter. But despite all of that, the vibes are immaculate because there's no Watson, who will torpedo another season. Yeah, man. I know I get accused of bullying Deshaun Watson, which is a hilarious notion. Like I'm bullying a guy who has like $230 million of guaranteed money and who likely does not even know I exist. But the truth is, man, like a lot of this shit was about him last year. Now, I'm not saying the whole season was on him, that there's nothing else the Browns need to fix. But maybe the Browns are under 500 last year, regardless of who plays quarterback. But I don't believe the Browns would be a 3-win team if Deshaun Watson wasn't the starter. If Deshaun Watson did not play last year, I think the Browns win 6 games. Like there was no reason for them to be that bad last year, other than Deshaun Watson. He was one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL, other than the guy who replaced him, who was absolutely worse than him. So yeah, I think that had a lot to do with it. Also like the weighing expectations of this Watson thing, changing the offense, that seemed to be a clear marker of distrust from the offensive line. And then they brought in Andy Dickerson, who for whatever reason completely flopped in Cleveland, like just had no buy-in from the offensive line from day one on. And I think that just led to an awful feeling. And I think the defensive guys felt it because they just saw how bad this offense was all training camp, all OTAs, all season. And I think when they're going through OTAs right now, there's no weird shutdown of one of the quarterbacks. It's just normal. And right now, normal is absolutely what the Browns want in that locker room, because last year was just so abnormal. Andrew says this: Shedeur Sanders was only drafted because his daddy's name. What a Nepo baby. Those same exact people, you got to draft Arch Manning. He's got a point. Now, I think it's a little different because Deion's name was as a defensive back and Shedeur plays quarterback, so it's not 1-to-1. Whereas Arch Manning plays quarterback and the Manning name is not synonymous with developing edge rushers, wide receivers, or corners. It's quarterbacks. And to be fair, the Manning name has never missed, right? So I don't blame people for having a lot of trust in the Manning name. If you think that Arch Manning is going to be good because his last name is Manning, it's not the most flawed logic out there, but you have to be aware of what you're doing when you're doing that, right? Which is you're letting Arch Manning benefit from nepotism. So when you say Arch Manning's going to be good, I don't need to see that many games, his last name is Manning, you're acknowledging that somebody can absolutely benefit from nepotism and it not be the worst thing in the world. In Shedeur Sanders' case, people use the nepotism exclusively as a negative thing against him. Like, it got to the point to where, like, I truly do believe Shedeur would have been taken in the second round if he was Shedeur Johnson. Like, the whole Sanders part of it, I think, got into people's crazy place with him to where they didn't see things straight. But that's just my personal belief of it all. But yeah, I do think there's something to this, right? A lot of people are assuming a lot of things on Arch Manning simply because that last name is Manning. Like, everybody who is excited about Arch Manning doesn't have a single favorite Arch Manning highlight. Nobody has a favorite Arch Manning highlight. Nobody does. It doesn't exist yet. That's not why you like Arch Manning. You like Arch Manning because, well, he's Arch Manning, and the Mannings have never missed, right? Archie Manning, good quarterback. Peyton Manning, good quarterback, Hall of Famer. Eli Manning, he's in the Hall of Fame, like the Super Bowl winner. So they have produced a lot of goodwill, and that goes into the Manning name, especially at quarterback. It's not 1-to-1, but yeah, like, people pick and choose when they care about nepotism for sure. They truly do, right? It's what nepotism do people find okay, right? You know, some people, their nepotism is a cool feature and a reason to cheer for them. Other people, their nepotism is a reason you should hate them, right? You know, it's like, oh, it's the harassment versus flirting meme, right? Where it's like some people, you know, Bronny James is like harassment when you talk about nepotism with him. But, you know, other guys, you bring up the fact that they have a famous uncle in the NFL or a famous brother or a famous father, and everybody's like, oh, that's such a cool story. I want to root for him more. People just pick and choose when they actually care about nepotism. because it's one of those things where it's like in sports, like I understand being upset about nepotism in other aspects of life, but in sports where you got to be good at the damn sport anyways to get the job, I don't really care about nepotism. If Arch Manning gets picked number 1 overall, it's probably going to be because he put together a good season of college football. And ultimately, his NFL career will be dictated by how good he is at football. Same thing with Shedeur Sanders, right? Everything about how he got drafted, all the stuff, the nepotism conversations. Shedeur's NFL career will be dictated by how good he is at quarterback. If he's great at quarterback, then nobody's going to care about the nepotism. And if he's not great at quarterback, then people are going to make a big deal of it. But the nepotism is not that important in sports, in my opinion. You got to play well, no matter what your last name is. So, yeah, it's one of them silly things people get all worked up about and act like they're super principled on, but nobody really cares that much about nepotism in sports. Maybe in, like, sports media, you care about it. Maybe in, like, other sports ownership, it's something that you really have to care about, because that's where nepotism is the most dangerous. It's when somebody incompetent passes their team to their even more incompetent child. Like, that's nepotism that really hurts you as a sports entity. But like Arch Manning getting love because his last name's Manning, not a big deal. Shedeur Sanders getting extra press because his dad's Deion Sanders, not that big of a deal. If he's good, he'll earn the hype. If he's not, he won't. You know, you get to earn it in sports. So nepotism, not a problem in sports. Everywhere else, you can argue it is. But yeah, I just don't care about it in sports. Y'all let me know in the comment section what y'all think. Have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.